Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Penn State, an uninspired Penn State, falls to Northwestern 22-21 at home. What does that mean? Drew Allar out for the season with an apparent ankle injury. And is James Franklin officially on the hot seat? All that and more in this quote-unquote emergency episode on Sunday morning. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane. Shawn, should I ask how you're doing today?
Let me put it this way. I feel like I'm one with the audience today because I am feeling exactly the same as all of you are right now. So just take that for what it's worth.
I think I just want to start this episode by saying that, usually we record on Monday. We have a little bit more time to digest. We've been able to watch the game a second time. And we've gotten the James Franklin full Monday press conference. And so we've been able to sort ourselves out a little bit more. I think this episode, especially given the circumstances that I just outlined, but also kind of where the program is at, I'm expecting this to be a little bit more of a ranty episode with maybe some unorganized thoughts here and there. I just before we came live on the show, I just ranted to Shawn about the only time that I yelled at the game yesterday, and that was just when the officials didn't realize that it wasn't Devontae Ross playing corner after a missed face mask, which was just I don't even know if I asked how you're doing, Shawn. I think I just you came on the show in the backstage, and I just immediately started ranting that was the only time that really upset me. But just a little disclaimer as we start the show. Welcome in, everybody. Please, this is we've gotten a lot of feedback on these episodes post loss. This is very therapeutic. We'll be reading your comments live on YouTube as we go about this episode. But Shawn, first I want to start with a tweet from Mark Thomas, who regretfully I did not have a chance to meet up with. I was trying to meet up with him tailgating yesterday, and he tried, but it was on me. It was a miscommunication on my side. I was inconsistent, to use James Franklin's words, when it comes to the Instagram DMing, and so that one 100% on me, 100% on me. But he had not been back in Beaver Stadium in a long time. I forget how long, but it had been a long time from what he had told me. But he tweeted at us yesterday, and I just think it's a good way for me to summarize how I felt, because I think he had it spot on. He said, quote, "Just an observation. First time back in Beaver Stadium in a good while. I've never seen a more indifferent atmosphere than today. Fatigue, I guess. I expected more booze, more toxicity, and more venom." And I love that word, venom. They were there in spurts, but everyone felt checked out from the opening kick, end quote. And Shawn, before we kind of get into the episode, I just want to echo that exact feeling. That is exactly how it felt. Yeah. I mean, I felt that way. I wasn't overly cheerful on the good plays or overly spiteful on the bad plays. I was very melancholy, just sitting there enjoying my time. And just kind of, I was an observer, Shawn. I was not a fan for that game. I was a true observer, and I felt that was definitely the case. I was expecting it to be way more toxic. I recorded when James Franklin was announced as a starting head coach in the starting lineups, because I was expecting, a Jurassic roar of disapproval. And yeah, I mean, there was booze. I'm not going to say there wasn't booze, but it was not to like a level of, ferocity that I was expecting it to be. And again, there were boos throughout the game, like when Allar had an incomplete pass, or when Kyron Hudson dropped a third down pass, or, the interception, obviously in the end zone. Like there were moments, like Mark Thomas said, but even when the game was over, yes, there were Fire Franklin chants going across the stadium while Northwestern was kneeling it out. But I didn't think it was to the point of, true anger. I think it is to the point of melancholy, just being completely numb and just utterly devastated. And I think that's where the fan base is at, Shawn. I don't think we're even angry anymore. I think we're past anger at this point.
Yeah, apathy is kind of the last death knell. It's like the final nail in the coffin. And I think when you descend into apathy, that means you completely lost the fans. Because when you're angry, that means you still care. That means there's still a part of you that still believes, because that anger comes from that belief, and that disappointment. And that is and look, I think I'm going to sound like Colin Cowherd here with the divorce analogy, but I'm going to use one. Like when you're with somebody, whether you're married or you're in a relationship long term, eventually you stop yelling at each other before the divorce happens, and you just kind of tune each other out. And I think that is what's happening with this fan base, probably with the university and James Franklin. So everybody knows where this is heading. It's just a matter of when. And yeah, I think that apathy it is definitely safe to say the apathy has set in for the fans. I think for some of the players, and I think for possibly the coaching staff itself.
Absolutely. Before we get into, because I'm glad you used that word, Shawn. That sums it up exactly correct. We will get to a lot of the fan questions you gave us last, and not even necessarily fan questions, but I will say this: the questions we received last night, again, seemed very apathetic. And I think we actually had a pretty good diversification. Shawn, I'm gonna mute you real quick. Are you good now? Okay.
Yep.
I think we had a good diverse of questions we'll get to today as well. Before I do that, well, just about the game itself. And I don't think we can go any further in this conversation before confirming the news that Franklin provided last night, that quarterback Drew Allar is out for the season. One thing I want to note, because even our friends were like, that's fast for Franklin to come out and say that. And it is fast. Franklin, in his press conference after the game, noted that he got approval from Drew Allar, and he got confirmation during the press conference from his SIDs that the family was able to confirm that he was allowed to release that information as well. So officially out for the season with an apparent ankle injury, but we don't know the specifics on that. We probably never will, given that there may be a medical red shirt or potentially, preparing for the NFL draft. A lot of times they try to keep that a little hush hush during the preparation and whatnot. But most importantly, the result, quarterback Drew Allar is out for the season, which means backup quarterback Ethan Grunkmeyer, who did come in for a 4th and 2 and got absolutely stuffed himself, will be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. Maybe Jackson Small plays a role in that, but I think we all agree Ethan Grunkmeyer will get the first shot at it. And his first game will be at Kinnick against Iowa at night. So I think it's funny. We keep talking about, I think a lot of people, when we lost to UCLA, was like, that's rock bottom. And I think it's very easy to assume that like losing to Northwestern at home is rock bottom. But I just want to make one thing very clear as we kind of get into this episode. Every team that Penn State has beat over the last couple of years is licking their lips with the opportunity. Iowa just put up the most points at Wisconsin that they've ever put up in their entire rivalry series ever. And now they get a chance to play Penn State at home at night with a new starting quarterback. Every team is going to be looking to take their opportunity to absolutely destroy Penn State. And so while it feels like we're at the rock bottom, I don't necessarily feel great about Mr. Ethan Grunkmeyer having his first career start being at Kinnick. And we'll talk about that, Shawn, a little bit more at the end of the show. But Drew Allar done, Shawn. He's completely done. Season's over. I don't even think we need to get into maybe the big picture with Drew Allar today. But obviously that coming out of this game without your starting quarterback, I mean, again, Penn State's 3-3. They're out of the playoff picture, and now they have lost their starting quarterback.
Yeah, it's one of those. Everything that could go wrong will go wrong, and it has gone wrong for Penn State. It has been a true season from hell that a lot of people. You've seen a lot of teams deal with similar seasons like this. Florida State just did last season. I think the thing that was so unexpected, though, is a team constructed like Penn State. I can't remember a team like that ever having a season like this. Like a team like Florida State having such a collapse last year. A lot of that is when you just fill with the portal every single year, like Florida State tends to do. You're going to get some lemons. It's just the nature of the beast when dealing with the portal. Where Penn State, they're such a senior-laden team, and just you don't see this. Like this was supposed to be the model to do this, and it really started with thinking Drew would progress, and now we're not going to have him the rest of the year, and you really have to feel for him. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but he really should have went draft last season. I think it would have been better for him. I think it probably would have been better for Penn State as well. And if I had to describe his career, it's unfortunate. I think that's the first word that comes to my mind, just with what's happened, our failure to develop him, our failure to put the right personnel around him, the failure to put the right coaches around him and the right play callers. And then, he didn't grow enough personally as a leader and as a quarterback. And like I said, a lot of that I put a lot of that on the staff because they really let him slip through their fingers. So just an unfortunate ending to, and look, I don't want to be too harsh on him. Like he did have some success here. But he's going to be remembered in a similar vein as Pack and Anthony Morelli, and I think that just really sucks.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Shawn, that's a great segue. By the way, Mudbug says about Florida State, they also didn't fire their coach, assuming Franklin doesn't survive this. One of the reasons why Drew Allar was not successful here was the lack of weapons around him. And to your point, look at Saturday. I don't know, again, if they listen to our podcast or watch the show, but Penn State did get Devontae Ross involved. Every time he had a catch, I just looked over at my wife and I was like, this is the guy that they did not get the ball to one time against UCLA. So I think they heard me. They got Devontae Ross the football. He had 7 catches for 115 yards with the long of 67. It looked like he tripped up a little bit. I don't know how he didn't score on that one play. They eventually got in the end zone eventually on that drive. But it was nice to see Devontae Ross get involved. But Kyron Hudson, 1 catch, 10 yards. Like I said, he had a massive drop on 3rd down. Trevor Pena, 2 catches for 5 yards, long of 4. And that's it. Not just for the receivers, but that's it for the tight ends as well. Not a single catch by a tight end on Saturday. The only other catch is 2 catches for Singleton for 6 yards. One of them went for 9 yards. The other one was actually for a loss of 3. And then Katron Allen, 1 catch for 1 yard. So besides Devontae Ross, if you would take Devontae Ross's yardage out of it, you're looking at a grand total of 22 yards for all of the other pass catchers besides Devontae Ross. So just in a way, a perfect summation of what Penn State failed to do with Drew Allar and getting him enough help. And that starts also with the offensive line. Katron Allen had a good day running the football, 16 carries, 90 yards, and 5.6 yards per carry. But they didn't, and I think this is a good maybe transition to Andy Kotelnicki. They didn't stick with that. They didn't stick with the north and south. They got a little cute. They went more east and west and put themselves in holes. They did at sometimes do some quick passes to Devontae Ross and get him the football quickly and get the ball out of Drew Allar's hands, but they didn't constantly do that. And they also still try to get Liam Clifford involved in the game, whether that was with the throw to the end zone on a fade, which is baffling, but also on a trick play to Liam Clifford where they wanted Liam Clifford to potentially throw the football. And Shawn, the point you've been, beating so hard on is Kobe Howard and Tyseer Denmark not playing. So again, and I think we'll talk about the defense, but I think the problems are different. I think they have the personnel on offense to be successful. Maybe not the offensive line. That's a whole nother crapshoot conversation. But I think as far as the weapons, like, yes, maybe they're not amazing, but Devontae Ross did great things at Troy, and he's doing good things here. Trevor Pena did really well at Syracuse, and now 2 catches for 5 yards. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, we know, are good running backs. And Kyron Hudson, didn't have a great career at USC, but we know is at least serviceable as a number 3 in worst case scenario. And they're not able to move the ball consistently, Shawn. And I don't think it's a personnel issue specifically. And I think that goes back to what you were saying. Well, they have failed to put Drew Allar in the best positions to win football games and to shine. And I think that is a complete reflection on the coaching staff.
Yeah. I mean, it starts at the top, right? And I also think, going big picture, if Frank, we're gonna find out a lot about Andy Kotelnicki here. If what happens, if things proceed as I think they will, and I don't think James Franklin's coach here this time next week. There's always been a thought of, is James meddling? Is he overcoaching? Does he get to and personnel decisions he's heavily involved in? So are we going to see more Tyseer Denmark? Are we going to see more Kobe Howard? And maybe also having a different quarterback that is more of a gunslinger. Like, a lot of people comp Gronk and Allar, but they are different, at least from what we've seen in high school with Gronk. And Gronk was more of a let it rip type of guy. So maybe he will be more willing to do the things that you struggled with, which was throwing with anticipation, throwing guys open, having, more confidence, and not just trying not to make mistakes as we saw with Drew. And I think that's another failure of the coaching staff. Like, I don't just put that on Drew either. I think he is overcoached. And I think he had it drilled in his head really since his freshman year with Cliff, because Cliff would make a mistake here and there for sure. Don't make mistakes. And I think he really took that to heart, and he just became a game manager where he has this 5-star talent, but he ends up being a game manager, and that's not his skill set. Some of the things he struggles with the most are those intermediate throws, and that's what they want him to run most of the time. They don't let him uncork it downfield at all. So maybe you will see more of that with James Franklin out and with Ethan Gruckmeyer in.
Yeah, and I think there's always some optimism when it comes to the backup quarterback. That's why the backup quarterback's the favorite player on the team for the fan base, right? I mean, that's just the most popular. That's why that is said. And there is some things to be optimistic about. He is a little bit better of a runner. He's not Bo Prabula, so we need to be careful with that. But he does have speed, a little bit more speed, a little bit better change of direction. But he's not as big either. So you are going to miss some things. Like Drew Allar would carry somebody a yard or two. And you're not going to get that with Grunkmeyer. I mean, you saw on that 4th and 2 where he got stuffed. But I want to, before we get too far down to Heath Grunkmeyer,
I'll be right back, guys.
Shawn, I don't think you need to leave to do that, by the way. I think you can just.
I can't fix it in the settings. But,
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Come back.
I'll be right back.
While Shawn comes back in, I think one thing that I want to talk about is that on the defensive side, and we'll talk more big picture in a second, because I know everybody is quick to go to this is just a psychological problem, and this is just a lack of spirit. And I mean, they are playing uninspired football. I get that. I think that really applies to the offense, right? And I never want to hear again that returning production really matters, because the offense returned a lot of production and it didn't really help. The offensive line came back and that didn't really help. I think that really is applicable to the offense. But with the defense, I think it's a different conversation. With the defense, I don't think they have the horses, which you could argue is even a bigger failure on the part of the staff, that you're in year 12 of your tenure and you don't have the horses to play with Northwestern. But right now, I don't think Penn State has the horses on the defense. They played every single defensive tackle they had. I think T. Frank gave Owen Wafel the defensive player of the game just because he did a couple good things and flashed at times, a couple times on defense. But they don't have the defensive tackles and maybe even the defensive ends, especially after some injuries, to really play Big Ten football. They don't have the linebackers right now to play Big Ten football. Dom DeLuca is getting run at, and he should not start any more football for Penn State. Like, I get he has a soft spot in our heart. We appreciate him. He's a good story. He is not a Big Ten linebacker, and he needs to stop being treated like one. Amari Campbell, yes, he is good, but he did not play well on Saturday either. A lot of missed tackles, but he's the best they've got. Obviously, they missed Tony Rojas. They don't have anyone else. And then you lose a Zion Tracy, and Kenny Wosley has to come in, and he played terribly. They are, and Zakee Wheatley, as much as I love him and think he is at least playing inspired football, he didn't have a great game. They don't have anybody. And so, yes, the offense, I think, is playing very uninspired, and there's some schematic issues that they need to clean up. I trust T. Frank, and I listen to T. Frank a lot. And if T. Frank tells me that they tried a lot of different things on defense and none of them were working, I believe him. And I do want to give the benefit of the doubt to Jim Knowles that he is a good defensive coordinator. Like, he didn't just all of a sudden forget how to coach defense. And I don't think it's a 4-2-5, 4-3 issue. I think it's our defensive tackles. Maybe they're getting cute 2 times with the schemes and the slanting and the different ways they're trying to run blitz, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you line up and you play football and you have to beat the guy in front of you. And Penn State on defense is not doing that. And so, yes, maybe they fire Franklin tomorrow or today, and Terry Smith takes over the program, and maybe some things change and there's a little bit of a shot of adrenaline to the program and they played a little bit more inspired on offense, and maybe they play a little bit more inspired on defense. But I don't think fundamentally they are going to be able to go into Kinnick and be able to stop a running attack like Iowa likes to do against anybody. They couldn't do it against Northwestern at home. I don't think that gets fixed all of a sudden just because you change a couple things and you don't have James Franklin as your head coach. The offense, I think, is fixable, Shawn. I don't think the defense, with the players they have, is going to get that much better.
Do we have better players than UCLA?
I don't know if we do.
I do. We do.
I don't know. You can tell me straight up right now. We have a better defensive tackle group and a better linebacking group than UCLA.
Yes.
So I don't know if we do.
I think we do. And is a couple things can be true at the same time, right? The defense, and I take some responsibility in this, right? We overhyped this defense. Absolutely. For what they were. And I actually feel bad about doing it on here, but I truly believed it. And I really thought there was going to be a natural progression. We were all concerned about the linebackers. We kind of just crossed our fingers with that a little bit. And we were kind of upfront about that part. But I didn't think this was going to be the Zane Durant we got. I didn't think this was going to be the Dennis-Sutton we got, even though I thought Denny actually played okay. But it's the defensive tackles, as you said, that just didn't play up to par, and they haven't. And they get moved pretty easily. That's all true. That part is all true. The part that I think you're undervaluing a little bit is they're not playing inspired football. And confidence and belief are a very powerful thing. Like, these are all pretty highly regarded guys, at least out of high school, except Dom DeLuca. And I've seen a lot of these guys play better than they have. I think Knowles has to change up the scheme a little bit. And like you said, I know he has been trying some different things and things haven't been working, but I really think there's a lack of inspiration there. Like when you late in the game, you need to get the ball back, you just get bullied down the field by Northwestern.
Right.
Which is what happened. And they got all the way down to inside our 5-yard line. If they scored, if he wanted to score, they would have scored. And they were just able to kneel it out. We never got the ball back. I think a lot of that comes from a lack of guts. I really do. I think this is a gutless team right now, and I think they look pretty soft. And I think with new leadership from the head coach, I think that shot in the arm could be pretty powerful. Now, am I saying we're going to go beat Ohio State and Indiana? No. Yeah, that does not make me feel at all better about those games. It doesn't make me feel that much better about this next game. But do I think they're going to be playing more inspired football? Yes, I do.
Yeah, more inspired football is great, Sean. You can play more inspired football. That's not going to make Dom DeLuca a better player. Like Dom DeLuca is
I'm getting to that. I'm getting that. DeLuca's probably going to have to sit, right, and play less. Now, the question is, who's next? Well, I think you got to try different guys. I think you got to try Keon Wiley. I think you have to look at who played quite a bit on Saturday, which surprised me. I didn't think he played particularly well, but I didn't think he played terrible either. No, I think he played better than DeLuca. So Keon Wiley may be your answer there, especially since he's been in the program longer. And he was out there for the first snap. So he was kind of like a starter. So I think having a guy like him really helps. But like I said, do we still have issues fundamentally? Yeah. And that's why we got next to no chance against a team like Indiana, who's going to be waiting for us with a garbage can to beat us into submission. So, I mean, do I think it's good enough to possibly get to 6 wins, 7 wins? It depends on what your expectations are. You know what I mean? It depends on what your expectations are. If you're expecting us to win out, no. But if you think we can make a bowl game, yeah, I still think that's in the realm of possibility if we fire Franklin or part ways with Franklin.
So what they did on Saturday was very personnel based. If they thought Northwestern was going to run the ball, Keon Wiley came out, and I want to say, and I might be wrong on this, but I want to say DeJuan Lane came out. If it was a more passing situation, King Mack came in, and Zion, I want to say it was Zion Tracy. There might have been someone else who came in instead. I was trying to watch it, but they were literally, those two were like right on the sideline. And oh, okay, it looks like a run. Those two would go in, the other two would come out. And they were constantly flipping back and forth. So that was a change. And I think Keon Wiley did provide a little bit better run support. I think T. Frank said it best when it was like, yeah, they held him to 4 yards instead of 6 yards. But Sean, the bottom line is, like, I don't think they have other guys that can play, right? Like, okay, Keon Wiley played, and it makes me wonder why he didn't play at all against UCLA, because I think he could have potentially, like, him playing against UCLA, like, he would have done better than Dom in stopping, Nico at that point.
So I think he'd be better against a team like UCLA than he was against Northwestern.
Right. And so that one's a little puzzling. But after that, like, I want to assume none of these other linebackers are playing is because they'd be even more god-awful, which is just terrifying in its own right. But I think Don Hartman says it best here on YouTube. The loss of last year's defensive tackles, Keziah Izzard, Devon Ellies, or Devon J. Thomas, if you will, was a huge factor. Those guys might not have been flashy, but they were stout against the run. I think you and I both and I think everybody underestimated that exact point. Like, how much did Devon J. Thomas do of the dirty work to let Zane Durant be who Zane Durant can be on a one-on-one? Like, we have learned very quickly that if you double team Zane Durant and you make him kind of have to be that kind of guy, he is not the same as when he can kind of play that 3 tech instead of 1 tech. And that
he's a non-factor.
And Knowles and them have tried different things to kind of loosen up Zane Durant. And to his credit, he did have 8 total tackles and a sack today, so it wasn't like it was his worst game. But defensive linemen are not graded on their box score. They're great on how well they soak up defensive or offensive linemen, and they let their linebackers play. A sign of a good defensive line is a sign that your linebackers are getting a bunch of tackles. And when your leading tackler is your safety pretty much week in and week out, that's not a great sign. When your defensive tackle is second in the box score tackles, that's not a good sign. And then when your corner is in the top 4 of tackles, that's not a good sign. And so this defensive line to me, Shawn, like when I think about Io or anything else, I don't care what Jim Knowles does. I don't think it's going to matter. Like they do not have maybe, and maybe this is again, we saw Alonzo Ford in spurts, right? We saw some of these guys that are playing a lot more snaps this year, at times last year have good moments, but they were only out there for 10 to 12 snaps. Now, when they're being asked to play 30, 40 snaps, it's a different story. And they're just not good enough, Shawn. And I'm not saying Jim Knowles is off the hook completely, but when I think of like the offense and defense, if I'm comparing the two, I do think that the offense has pieces to be way better than they are currently. When I look at this defense right now, I don't know what you want Jim Knowles to do. I think someone said it best. Do you want him to tie AJ Harris's shoes for him? Like, I don't know sometimes what you want them to do, right? Like what else do you want him to throw out? Like, yes, he should have went to spy earlier against UCLA, but I don't know if there's that much more he can reach into his bag to pull out versus what I think Andy Kotelnicki does have way more criticism, does need to shoulder way more of the blame than Knowles does. Do you agree with me on that? That at the very least, Andy Kotelnicki is more to blame for his problems on offense than Knowles is blame for the defense?
I would say so, yes. Part of my problem with Andy has been he's so stubborn, and he just keeps doing the same thing over and over again, and that's why people think it might actually be Franklin, because Franklin is known to be a very stubborn man, especially when it comes to offense, and that's common of a lot of coaches that have been coaching a long time and they've had some success. But if college football is not a stubborn man's game, you have to be adapting all the time or you die. But yeah, I mean, as far as Knowles goes, it's not this, and T. Frank talked about this last night too. I can't believe I listened to him because I didn't think I'd want to listen to anything regarding Penn State football, but I ended up doing it. We're running a lot of the same stuff we did last, as far as 4-2-5. We are running a 4-2. We've had a 4-2-5 pretty much all year last year. It might have been like, if you go to the NCAA video game, it might say 4-3, but we ran a 4-2-5 all the time last year.
Right.
Difference is Jim Knowles runs a different style than Tom Allen does. He asks his defenses to do more. Or defensive linemen to do other assignments rather than going and attacking, which is what Zane Durant is very good at. He asks them to absorb blocks, absorb those guards more, and let his linebackers, kind of attack. Problem is, we don't have the linebackers to do that. And I think and believe me, Jim Knowles gets it. He's not a dumb guy, contrary to what people might think right now. But it's just, at a certain point, yes, there is a lack of having the horses, but there's also just a lack of passion. And something, Corey, something that happened yesterday that hadn't happened in the first 2 losses, all the mental mistakes. You had so many
That's such a good transition.
Fouls. One of the big plays in the game, I think, we take the lead right before half. We go up 14-10. And this is probably the biggest difference between this particular team, and the last 3 teams who had, their own faults. But I know even the 2023 team would have done the same thing. Zariah Fisher goes after the quarterback. He looks like he made a play, but he grabs the face mask. And then what happens? We don't just sack up and say, all right, that happened. Let's get off the field now. Nope, we let them go down the field. They kick a field goal. They actually go into the half with momentum. And it's a 1-point game. That cannot happen. If this was last year's team or the year before that, Zariah Fisher sacks the quarterback, and we either end up getting a turnover on a 3rd and long, or at the very least they punt. And instead they keep the ball, keep going down the field. Then the Devontae Ross muff, just a lot of dumb mistakes.
Can I add one to that list?
Yeah.
How about and they ended up scoring on it, so it's not the end of the world. But how about the Tyler Hallsworth return for 9 yards to the Penn State 9-yard line? Like, did he think he was KJ Hamler? Do you think he was KJ Hamler in the App State game? Like, what was he thinking on? But I think, Shawn, to your point, I'm so glad, because that's exactly where I wanted to go next. And I will let you finish your thought. But the penalty yardage, like, I think this is a team that was trying to play inspired, right? They're trying to make a play almost to a fault. And
pressing.
Yes, pressing. And it's we've had that conversation, I think most notably when we play at Michigan. We call them the quicksand games, when the harder you try, the quicker you sink. Shawn, I don't think we've ever been in a quicksand losing streak, though. But that's kind of like what we're in right now, because it seemed like they're pressing. Please go ahead.
Yeah. And when you start pressing, you start making mistakes. It's like anything in life, right? Sometimes you got to just kind of go with the flow a little bit, and it's hard to find that balance. But we are all out of whack right now. So yeah, I'm happy you brought up the Holsworth thing. That guy's been here forever. Like, it has to be told to him, hey, if it gets kicked to you here, you fair catch it. That's it. You don't return it. Unless it's a squib and you happen to get it at the 15-yard line, you want to pick up a few yards, okay, whatever. But if you're getting it near the goal line, you are fair catching that no matter what. So just a lot of just dumb mistakes. And and part of it is, and look, part of it's coaching, sure. But the best teams, I said this on Twitter too, best teams are player-led. And when you guys keep making these mistakes, a lot of it's on players too. Like, and people don't love blaming the players, but they shoulder a lot. They shoulder some of this blame. And, I am one to quote JFK on this show, but I'm going to paraphrase him a little bit. He once said, victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. Well, this defeat has a lot of fathers, because there's a lot of people that shoulder the blame. And yes, it comes from the top with Franklin. But these players, man, to be as senior-led, and these are a lot of seniors making these mistakes. Holsworth has been here a while. Zariah Fisher has been here a long time. I didn't think that was roughing the passer, but everything else was legit. That was the only, like, straight-up bogus penalty I thought happened that I didn't think should have been called.
And I think, I actually think, too, like, Zariah Fisher played inspired football. Like, if you want to, like, go through,
he played hard. I will give him that.
Like, he made some dumb mistakes, but he also played his butt off. And I mean, I think he ended 2 drives by himself. He had a sack, but then he also had a hurry or a pressure that caused an incomplete pass, I think, on 3rd down. So he did some really good things. And maybe this is, I think, where we share the same frustration that Franklin has, because I think that same thing can be said about the offensive line inconsistency. But it's just like one guy does something well, but nobody else does. Or the offensive line blocks well, but one person doesn't. Like, as dumb as some of the play calls were on the East and West stuff with, like, the end arounds, Nick Dawkins still can't block anybody. And they tried, Shawn. Again, I guess a little bit of credit to Andy Kotelnicki and the offensive line to, try dunk at right tackle with Shanahan at right guard. Cousins didn't play, by the way, but they at least tried a couple things instead of just leaving Dunk at right guard. So I guess I appreciate that, but it very clearly means that they don't have anybody else at center that they can play, because I think they would if they could. And that to me is like the offensive line is kind of how I feel about the entire defense, where, like, yeah, it would be nice. This reminds me, Shawn, I was thinking about this when I was driving home from the grocery store this morning. It almost reminds me of, like, early James Franklin, where Donovan Smith and Franklin did not get along. And I think Franklin would have loved to bench Donovan Smith at times, because I don't think he was playing inspired football. He had nobody else he could put in there at left tackle.
No.
And that was the case across the board with that team. But in some situations, it feels very eerily similar, where it's like, yeah, I would love to bench you and put a freshman in. Like, for example, Kenny Wosley coming in when Zion Tracy got banged up, but then Wosley gives up 2 third downs. It's like, My grandfather talked about and I'll probably get this wrong, but before Paterno went on a tear in the late 60s, he benched a lot of the seniors and put in a lot of the true freshmen or true sophomores. So they weren't a lot of play freshmen back then, but put a lot of the true sophomores in that started the tear. Jack Ham was one of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is an awesome story, and it should, have probably books written about them. But what happens if you do that and they suck?
Yeah, the whole mass subbing, like, these guys can't do any worse. Sometimes they could, actually, like, that has happened. Like, and it's hard to say to a Penn State fan it can't get any worse, but we were a point away from winning. We have, and I think that's almost the more frustrating thing is, can they just blow us out just so that we're not hanging around for 3.5 hours just waiting for the inevitable? Because about 10 minutes left in the game, we may even still been winning at this point. I was like, we're gonna lose. Like, you could just see
I said the exact same thing to
Maddie. I said it to my wife too. I was like, we're gonna lose. Like, I could see how this is gonna go. They're gonna come down here. They're gonna score. We're not gonna be able to do anything, and that's what happened. So yeah, I mean, the whole idea of and look, part of that though, again, shouldering blame. Part of this comes back on the coaches too. Why don't we have more guys ready? Part of it's injury. Javen Williams battling injury.
Sure.
Cooper Cousins also battling an injury. But guys like Alex Burkmeyer, like, who just hasn't developed. None of these guys could play at all. Even a little bit.
Linebacker is where I go to that, Sean. Kari Jackson.
Yeah, linebacker too. Kari Jackson. Or Dakari Nelson. Yeah, both of them.
All the Karis.
How aren't these guys ready? We don't have anybody else ready to play. And look, I know keeping depth is harder in today's day and age.
Time
with the portal.
Do you think Alex Tash got hurt?
I was looking for him. I actually thought 34 was him at first, and it ended up being Owen Wafel. Because I was like, who's this guy? Because I was like, white guy, 54. I was like, no, Tash is 34. Okay, he's 54. Okay. Actually, kind of agree with T-Frank. I thought Wafel played pretty good. Maybe he could help us defensive tackle. But anyway, just a lack of being able to develop depth. And God, I remember coming into this year and they said we have 7 or 8 offensive linemen that could play. Do we have 2? I know Manga could play.
Can we just sum up that real quick? Franklin said, again, when we've said this before, that the offensive line is a Joe Moore offensive line. He said he has the best, not only team roster he's ever assembled, but also the best coaching staff assembled. So I think when we talk poorly about James Franklin here, and probably in the next 10 minutes or so, I think I want to make sure that is like, he set these expectations, not us.
Yes, he did.
Ben Carr on YouTube said, great podcast, guys. Keep up the good work. Appreciate that, Ben. Make sure, if you haven't already, you've liked the video and you subscribe to the podcast. And 34 is Wayful.
Okay. I must have.
34 is Wayful. Sean, is there anything else you want to specifically talk about? I think we're ready to let the fan questions drive the rest of the show, and I will take questions on live on YouTube as well. But we got, again, a good diversification of question on Twitter that we will start with, but we will kind of see where things go. Is there anything before you want to get to that, Sean?
Yeah, I think we could kind of let the fans drive the rest of this, because I think we all know what the big elephant in the room is right now. So might as well just get right into it.
Before I do that, if you haven't already, please make sure to drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We will read those on the show if you go ahead and do that and you're listening to this a little bit later. All right, let's get into our fan questions. Man, where do we start? Let's try to take this one piece at a time. Let's start with Taylor Wolf. Sean, he asks, can you give us your best insight as to how we have, best insight into how we have fell so far so fast. Feels like we're one overturned call away from being 6-0. And I think that what he's getting at, if I may here, is the dam busted during the Oregon game. And it just doesn't seem like we've been able to pick ourselves up the mat ever since, Shawn.
Yes, that definitely has some truth to it. And maybe if that play gets overturned, maybe, or doesn't get overturned, I should say, maybe we are sitting here undefeated. But that also tells me we weren't really built on stable ground. If all it took was one loss, and especially in today's college football where you could have 2 losses and make the playoff, if that's all it took, that means there are other issues involved here. So yeah, I think it's one of those weird scenarios where I could definitely see a world in which we are 6-0 right now. But this was coming eventually because you can't just break down like we have if everything is just steady and stable. But that's what happened. So yeah, they really buckled under the expectations that Franklin himself set for this team, and we haven't been able to pick ourselves up. And I think there are a variety of different reasons, but ultimately it comes back to we just kind of buckled, and we were never that great to begin with.
You know what it reminds me of is this Penn State team was like a wet cardboard box. And you don't know that it's wet and you don't really know how secure it is, but you put a bunch of books in it and you lift that puppy up for the first time. Like maybe you've shuffled it around a little bit, but the first time you actually have a true test and you actually have to pick that thing up, the bottom just falls right out from the inside and all your shit's all over the floor. Like I feel like what happened here. Like, yeah, it looks like a good box, but as soon as you pick that thing up and you actually have to move it for once, the bottom just came right out. And to your point, it was never stable to begin with. I think you can make things appear that way. But Shawn, if listeners take anything from this podcast over the years, and I know we have a very, call it, niche fan base of insane people that listen to us on a regular basis, probably for good reason. But what is one thing that we have just harped on year in and year out? It is these non-conference games, even against poor competition, tell us a lot about the Penn State football team over the years. Whether it's we can't run the football, whether it's we can't have explosive plays, or this year, the obvious fact that FIU was able to stay on the field against this defense. Then Oregon was able to stay on this field against this defense. Then UCLA was able to stay on the field against this defense. Then Northwestern was able to stay on the field against this defense. Or the fact that the Penn State offense didn't let anyone else get on the field because they didn't even feel great about the receivers they had and the passing attack that they had, and that they needed to work on things with their starters, and they wouldn't even let the Tyseer Denmarks and Kobe Howards of the world get on the field. Or the Penn State linebacking core, we never saw Cam Smith, we never saw Alex Tash, we barely saw Specca. Like we didn't see any of these other guys because Jim Knowles was terrified of the starters he had. So if you take anything away from this, as far as trying to understand how this has continued to snowball, I think there were signs, there were cracks in the foundation that if you're buying a new house, hopefully your inspector points out before you sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, and there were signs here even before we played any games. We talked about think about the depth at defensive end, because one thing we haven't talked about much is the lack of a pass rush. And I think everybody was excited when they saw Denai was coming back this year. Because we were like, all right, so Denai is going to be back. We're going to get Smith Vilbert back. We're going to have Max Granville here. We might get Amin Vanover back too. And we know all those guys could play. Like, they're all proven commodities, especially Vanover. And then Vanover gets his waiver denied. I swear he's the only guy ever to get his waiver denied in the NCAA today. But you got to deny it for whatever reason. I have no idea if you have to jump through the 3 hoops of fire to do it, and everybody seems to accept Amin. Smith Vilbert goes to join Bill Belichick at North Carolina. We can't even make fun of North Carolina because we're almost, if not as bad as them, so we can't even make fun of them. And then Granville gets hurt. And everybody was so excited about Max Granville, and he ends up getting injured. So then all of a sudden, we're down to Denai and Zariah Fisher. And Denai, like I said, I think he played pretty good on Saturday, but that's Denai. He's pretty good. He's a good player, but he ain't in the Chop Robinson, Abdul Carter class. I think that's pretty obvious to everybody at this point, right? He's just not. Now, different type of player, not a speed guy necessarily, but just not in the same class. So you had that. We talked about the obvious lack of depth at defensive tackle. We even tried to pick up Bear Alexander in the portal. Didn't end up coming. And then there was another guy too that I forget. I think his name was Bly. I don't know if you remember that guy or not. In the portal that we tried to get to a defensive tackle that ended up coming. We ended up getting Owen Wafel, who we didn't really see much of until this past Saturday. Played okay. So that lack of depth at the defensive tackle, and everybody's talked about the lack of depth at linebacker. And the worst case scenario happened. Tony Rojas got hurt. So there were signs there. And then, and out of conference play, they got exploited. And it started really with FIU. Now, FIU only scored 7 points, but they were on the field a lot, especially in the first half. And I think it's easy to look past it and say, oh, they're bored. Oh, they're this. Oh, they're that. And sometimes that's true, but it doesn't really seem to be that way for Penn State. Usually Penn State, if they're playing shitty in the out of conference, they're going to play shitty in the in conference too.
Exactly. Just to wrap up that point, Shawn, MG Jones had asked a similar question, but he says on a scale of 1 to 10, how unfathomable would you think that this would be? Just quickly in an elevator pitch. 10? Yeah.
10. I never thought it would be this bad.
No, I agree.
I think it could happen or, but not this.
It's a hindsight thing to me too, right? Like we probably, look, we're a fan podcast, so I don't, we admit our bias. But I was even more blinded than I think I probably should have been to some. I think what it comes back to me is the returning production. Like, as far as things that are unfathomable, the offensive line play to me has been unfathomable. If you tell me like Drew Allar isn't a great passer again, okay, sure. Not overly surprised by that, right? But like we can't lean on the running game against Northwestern. That's unfathomable to me. So that's there are pieces that are more than others, but yes, over the top 10 out of 10.
Part of that too is K-Tron got a lot of carries early and we kind of got away from him a little bit. He did have, I think he ended up with 16 carries. To me, it should have been at least 20. And I know as the game went on, he didn't run as well. Part of it, I think Northwestern started crowding the box a little bit more and couldn't handle that. But yeah, I think just the most like the offensive lack of great play from the offensive line is like a 20 out of 10 for me. But like I said, some of the other things are a little surprising, but really not that shocking. Like you said, Drew kind of looks like he always looked. The receivers not being what they could have been. Okay, I think everybody thought that could happen. The loss of Tyler Warren at the tight end position. I think we thought it would impact it, maybe not the severity that it has.
Yes, that's a good point.
Because guys like Luke Reynolds just haven't stepped up. Yes, there is a big difference between Khalil Dinkins and Tyler Warren.
When was the last time a tight end didn't have a catch in a Penn State game? You know what I mean?
You know what it might have been? The West Virginia game in 2023. That was one of the first signs that Yurcich might be out when he just refused to go to the tight ends for
Right.
8 weeks. That's the only time I
Shawn,
could.
let me I'm gonna need to do something real quick, but let me pitch this question to you. It's really two questions from two different people. Really about let's go to this question first. Dorito Bandit says you guys are pretty good at deciphering Franklin speak. Did it seem like he's mentally checked out at this point? His answer seems like he knows he just coached his last game at Penn State. To Dorito's point, a lot of friends and family were also in attendance for that post-game presser. In addition to that, it was also asked by Will Gamble, did all the things going on after the game and at the press conference seem to you guys like everybody, including Franklin, know he's done here? And again, I will be I just need to shut my door real quick, but please take that one first, Shawn.
Yes and yes. I think that is the case. I think James Franklin is a pretty transparent is a pretty honest sleeve. He is a pretty honest sleeve type of guy, in that you could kind of he doesn't have a very good poker face, and most of the time, if he's not enthusiastic or passionate, you could really tell. And he kind of looked dead on the sideline too, and just blank look on his face. And I think he thinks it's toward the end. He also said that he's committed to the players in that locker room. He did not say that he is committed to Penn State. And that's one of the reasons I think this separation is coming sooner rather than later, because I just think he's checked out. Now, I also kind of found, and I don't think anybody's really drawn this thought of this possibility, committed to the players in this locker room. Well, I'm here to tell you, James Franklin's going to be a pretty hot commodity if he does decide to keep coaching next year, which I don't know if he will. And the transfer portal opens as soon as he leaves. So do with that for Penn State. So do with that as you will. I think James Franklin's going to try to take as many guys with him from Penn State as he can. And that's just the nature of college football right now. But yeah, to answer the question directly, yes, I do think he's pretty checked out.
Yeah, I think just, the last thing I'll say to that too is it seemed like he was trying to defend the other coaching staff and make sure he always puts the blame on him, whether he believes that or not. But it almost seemed like he was trying to make sure, like, this is not because of Andy. This is not because of Jim Knowles. Like, this is me. Almost don't blame them for me. This is an interesting question by Brennan Malinovich, longtime listener. A sort of a conspiracy question. He's like, I hate to see a player injured, but did anyone else notice that not a single teammate went out there to help Drew Allar off the field? Many cameras throughout the season showed him by himself on the sidelines. Did he lose the care of his teammates? First of all, everything we probably say to answer this question is full speculation. So let's just throw that out there before we even begin to speculate. But I will say this. I've been at all the home games this year. The first thing I want to say is there is a stark difference between, say, last year. I mean, do you remember when Cam Wallace got hurt and the entire team carried him off the field? Do you remember when I don't know who got hurt. A defensive lineman got hurt. I don't know who it was. Was it Amin Vanover? I don't think it was a season-ending injury, but someone else got hurt. And again, Dennis-Sutton was out there. Like, there was a bunch of defensive linemen out there helping. I don't remember who exactly was that got hurt, but they were out there helping. And you don't see as much of that this year. In addition to that, Shawn, about Drew Allar specifically, they say in the press conferences and the individual player interviews, they say all the right things. We have Drew's back, blah, 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 blah. But two things come to mind for me. Number one, Zane Durant was interviewed after the game, and he wasn't even aware that it was a season-ending injury for Drew Allar. So you're not aware that your starting quarterback is out for the season by the time you talk to the media. Like, that's suspicious to me. Like, I know he's defense, and the offense and the defense are very segregated, as most teams are, but that wasn't conveyed to everybody before they talked to the media. That seems suspicious to me. And again, you think a senior guy like Zane would at least have a better relationship maybe with Allar where he would want to know that. Again, that's just reading the tea leaves a little bit, but that came off at the very least as sort of weird on why wouldn't he want to know the latest? The bigger thing to me, though, Shawn, is I have seen this offense come off the field a ton after 3 and outs this year, or a ton after disappointing drives this year. There have been many times where nobody goes to Drew Allar after he walks off the field. I'm just throwing that out there. There are times where, and I specifically have went to watch this to see if someone comes over to console him or to pick him up. And a lot of times that did not happen. Take that for whatever you will. Maybe he's a guy, like there are some guys where like, yeah, you need to get in their face and like tell them to wake up. I actually saw Amari Campbell do that to Jalen Harvey after Jalen Harvey had a close after the whistle was dead hit. And Amari Campbell went over and slapped him on the helmet and was like, hey, good play, but like use your head. And I was like, yes, Amari Campbell, that's what I want to see more of. Maybe Drew Allar is not that kind of guy, right? Maybe they know Drew Allar is a guy that's like, hey, when he's trying to figure his stuff out, just kind of let him figure his stuff out. Going up to him is not going to help. Maybe they know that about him, and I don't know that, so I'm wrong. I don't see a lot of, hey, you'll get the next one, Drew, sort of thing going on the sideline when I saw him coming to the sidelines.
Yeah, they just don't rally around him. And part of the problem, I think, is, look, when you're the quarterback, it's your job, especially on the offensive side of the ball, to be able to rally the troops. And you would see this, obviously we've all seen the NFL films, Tom Brady doing it, Mahomes doing it, but even like quieter guys like Joe Montana would also, like, have you ever seen that video of Joe Montana? They're trying to drive down the field to win the Super Bowl, and he sees John Candy in the stands. And to calm his guys down, he goes, oh, guys, look, there's John Candy. And it kind of took everybody's mind off and kind of calmed everybody down. I just don't think Drew fits into either of those categories. And I think I really just don't think the guys believe, and I hate saying this because he just got hurt, but I just don't think they really believe in him as a leader and as quarterback. And part of that is on the coaches because they never took the training wheels off him. They never let him play, really. They always told him what he can't do. Don't make mistakes. Don't do this. But the problem with that is you don't let the guy play and work through things. And I think that's part of the problem with Drew is there's just a lack of belief in him throughout the program for whatever reason.
And I agree with that, Shawn. But also, at the same time, there were moments where he had opportunities and they've ended it with interceptions.
Sure. It's not just on the coaches. This is also partly on Drew. And from every account, Drew's a really nice kid. Sometimes being too nice isn't really what you want in a quarterback. Quarterback kind of has to be a bit of an asshole. And I don't think Drew has that in him. Like there's a lack of an it factor and a lack of an edge to him. And it's always been apparent, even going back to
when he was a freshman.
Going back to his freshman Michigan game, where he just kind of looked a little deer in the headlights.
Yes.
And he still has that same look, just deer in the headlights. And when things go bad, like you said, they got a 3 and out. If you watch him, he just goes and sits on the bench with Danny O'Brien. Goes, sits on the bench with Danny O'Brien. Goes, sits on the bench with Danny O'Brien. And then he goes back out for the next drive. Like that's not what you need.
Because a lot of people are going to get to this. I see a lot of dumb things like, oh, he's not even going to get drafted or he's a day 3 guy. You're morons. I'm like, you're just more like, I agree. I don't think he's going to be. What's that?
When do you think he's going to get drafted?
I think he gets drafted in the second day. I think he gets drafted second round, third round.
I think it's third round.
Quinn
Ewers drafted 7th.
Yeah, but Quinn Ewers is not the remember Hackenberg got drafted in the second round.
I think you are an insane person if you draft Drew Allar in the second round.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying I would draft him in the second round, but I'm saying from a work ethic, from like a knowing the X's and O's, and from a physical trait ability, he hits all three of those 100%. He's going to interview well. He's going to do really well in the combine. I know. I agree with everything, right, Shawn? But it's the same reason why, like, he's going to get drafted way higher than Tracy McSorley ever would have got drafted, even if Tracy McSorley won a national championship. Like, I agree with all of that. But from the standpoint of, like, when he's going to get drafted, he's going to get drafted really high still. Because some GM or some, very self-assured person is going to say, you know what? I can fix Drew Allar. And I can take they're going to think of him as a blank canvas. And they're going to say, I can make him an NFL quarterback because I am a quarterback guru and he was just mismanaged and he didn't have the right things around him. And maybe some of that is partially true. I don't think it's going to work, but someone's going to think that way, Shawn, and someone's going to take him a lot higher than people think. Because again, from, here on out, he doesn't have to put anything else on film, and everything he does in shorts and a t-shirt is only going to make him look better. And someone's going to take him a lot higher than people. And again, I don't think he deserves to go a lot higher. I wouldn't recommend your Dolphins take him, but I think somebody will take him higher. I don't know if they'll have a job in 3 years after taking him, but someone's going to take him a lot higher than people are thinking right now.
I don't see
it. I think it was right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's going to happen. Mudbug asks, has a coach ever had something just go so terribly wrong in the last 15 days as it has for Franklin?
I don't think so. We're the first team ever to lose back-to-back games as 20-point favorites. I really don't think so. Like, I'm really trying to think, but like, this is more of a disaster than Clemson or
without
Texas.
A scandal.
He Texas just beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, he said like without a scandal, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, yes. Just strictly football? No, I think this is the worst.
All right. Let's get into some of the more Franklin conversations here. Well, let me do one more non-fan question. Daniel from Instagram says, what do you guys think about Grunkmeyer next week and moving forward? We talked a little bit about that. To summarize it, though, I think Grunkmeyer is going to get the ball out quicker. I think he will push the envelope for better or worse more than Drew Allar. But I am absolutely terrified of him going into Kinnick Stadium. Like I for one, like obviously hate Iowa tremendously. I would have felt really good about Drew Allar at Iowa because Drew Allar wouldn't have made mistakes. We may have been in a rock fight, but you don't want to feed Iowa at Iowa with mistakes. And that is scary. And on top of that, a new first starting quarterback going up against Phil Parker's defense, that's not a fun test. And I think Phil Parker's a little bit overrated, but again, the guy's been there for 14 years now. And without him, does Kirk Ferentz have a job for as long? Probably not. So yeah, I'm very terrified, but at the same time, like, you have to have some sort of optimism. Like, he is going to do things differently than Drew Allar, and what Drew Allar had done to this point had made you 3-3. So there's always going to be a little bit of like, well, it can't get worse until it does.
Yeah, I think about this Iowa matchup, and I do think Grunk could give you a bit of a shot in the arm, just because he's going to present different challenges. There isn't a ton of film on him because he's really only got in a mop-up duty. The only non-mop-up duty he had was yesterday, and he ran what looked like a I don't know what that was. I don't think it was a quarterback draw.
No, I think he was supposed to throw it and he didn't like it.
Yeah, I think that's what it was too, and it just looked really bad. But yeah.
By the way, should they just hand that ball off to Katron Allen for better or worse and just?
Yeah, but it's Penn State. We don't put the ball in our best players' hands.
Would that have been too predictable to just be like, "Hey, Katron, go get this"?
Well, if it depends. If it worked, then no. If it didn't, then it's so predictable.
Right.
It's one of those things.
Imagine if they would have handed the ball to Nick Singleton instead. Imagine how the fans would have appreciated that.
No, and then T. Frank talked to, and so did Franklin, about Northwestern being a lot like Iowa, in that they don't make a lot of mistakes. Well, part of Andy's offense, and I've texted my dad a little bit about this because my dad, and he's right, he's like, this is too gimmicky. But I texted my dad, this is the offense. This is what Andy Kotelnicki does. Like, he is a gimmicky play caller. That's just what he's going to do. It's just part of the offense. Like, and I think there's a big push within the fan base, which I understand and I have a lot of sympathy for, about just, line up straight and run at these guys. That's not what Kotelnicki does. Even though that's probably the best path with the personnel we have, that's just not what he does. And the reason I bring that up is if it didn't work against Northwestern, all the window dressing and everything, when you're playing against a better defense like Iowa, it's really not going to work. So something better change, or this offense ain't going to do much of anything on Saturday. But I don't think it can because it's just who Andy is. Right.
I mean, the East-West stuff, when Katron Allen's averaging 5.6 yards per carry, seems insane to me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the East-West stuff, and T. Frank goes into really good detail about how Northwestern's very disciplined defense and just beat them. Like, just line up and beat them sometimes. And I get it against Ohio State, against, teams that have a little bit more talent, and you're going to lose that line of scrimmage battle, which I guess, we're losing a line of scrimmage battle against everybody now. I get how you want to get cute sometimes to potentially, get specific players in space and create matchups you like. Katron Allen is the best player on the field. He needs to be fed the football, and it worked when they stuck with it. Shawn, let's get into the question of the day. I think Joe Rogers sums this up best. How quickly do you think Franklin is out? How hard is it to get the $50 million approved to fire someone fast? Let me just start by saying, before I turn it over to you, again, we talked about that buyout structure a little bit last week. That's not a $56 million lump sum. It's not like you have to, put it all out at once. So that's the first thing. Again, a reminder that if Franklin were to get another job, say he gets paid, $3 million, that is subtracted from the total that we'd have to pay him for the year. So that helps a little bit as well. So you're not looking at a full buyout, assuming that Franklin wants to get a job somewhere else. From what we have heard, fans with sources, sounds like Franklin isn't ready to do a TV job or to relax for a year. And honestly, Franklin doesn't seem like the guy that wants to take a year off from doing anything. It's just not how he's wired. So we'll kind of watch that. How quickly do you think Franklin is out? Let me just say first, how quickly do you think Franklin is out is different than asking us, how quickly do you want Franklin out? Let's answer that. Let's answer that question first, Shawn, because I want it to be very clear before people start yelling at us on YouTube. How quickly do we want Franklin out? Shawn, I want Franklin out. It's 12:07 Eastern. I want Franklin out within the hour. Is what I would want. I would want to have Terry Smith become the interim head coach, and I would want him to be able to game plan before their practice this afternoon, because they practice on Sundays instead of Mondays, to be able to figure out the game plan moving forward for Iowa. I think the players would respond very well to Terry Smith, who's a players coach, who's recruited a lot of these guys, who's a mainstay, who's a Penn State guy, who knows what needs to be done, would be able to keep what Franklin was doing well together while also injecting some fresh energy while they figure this out long term. additionally, I don't know what that then means as far as, you can't fire everybody. You got to still run a program. I don't know what happens at OCDC. We can talk about that in a second. But right now, yes, I would want Franklin gone, and I would want Terry Smith as the interim head coach starting at 1:00 Eastern on Sunday. What would you like, Shawn? And then we'll answer what we think is actually going to happen.
I would like the same thing as you. But I want us to do this in a smart way. And what I mean by that is I do not want to pay him $50 million. I just don't want to do that. But the good thing is I don't think we're going to have to. I think there's going to be a negotiated settlement. As I said earlier, I think Franklin is done with Penn State as we are with him. And I think he'd be willing to take a lesser buyout to leave the situation, because really, if he goes 3-9, Corey, is that good for James Franklin personally?
Probably not.
Probably not, and in trying to get, and then just coming up in December and being like, well, time to get a head coaching job, as opposed to just getting out of Dodge now. It's probably going to be better for him too, personally. So he ain't going to be doing us a favor necessarily by taking less money, although it would benefit us. But I think that's the best way we could kind of mutually part ways with each other. And I think we're heading toward that. And I do think, to answer the question, I think it'll be sometime either by end of the day today, maybe tomorrow, or sometime this week. I think the press conference gets canceled tomorrow or rescheduled, and Terry Smith is the guy in the chair.
There's some speculation about a board of trustees meeting tomorrow.
I saw that.
Doesn't
look like it's related to this, but you never know.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of things flying around, and we're going to talk about potential replacements in a second. But I want to just maybe preface everything by saying there's going to be a lot of rumors thrown around. We're going to try to do our best to filter them. We're still going to provide you with the rumors because it's fun, but we're going to try our best to filter out some of that. I would be surprised, Shawn, if James Franklin makes a trip to Iowa. I really would.
Yeah, I don't think he does.
Again, I said this, I think, last week. I thought Iowa was going to be the final straw when we inevitably lose to Iowa, if Franklin was the head coach, because then that gives Terry Smith and company 2 weeks to kind of figure that out before Ohio State, and it's a little bit easier to do that. Doing that this week does stink, given that it's a short week and you got to get all the way out to Iowa. And I understand why that would be a challenge that maybe they wouldn't want to do. But I don't think they can wait another week. And if they do, I mean, we talked about firing people on a tarmac is not a real thing. If they go out to Iowa and Franklin's still the coach and they get blown out, that may actually be a firing on the tarmac situation. And Shawn, what in your mind, because I have a lot of friends down in Alabama, SEC fans, Georgia fans, Bama fans, Auburn fans. They sympathize for me. They wouldn't want to see Franklin anywhere near their programs. So I think the whole Auburn thing is kind of a funny idea. I don't know how serious a head coaching job in an SEC school is even on the table. People are mentioning Arkansas. I don't even know if Arkansas would touch him. I know you like North Carolina. Is a head coaching job at call it North Carolina, Duke level or above realistic for James Franklin?
I think so. I think North Carolina and him would actually be a very good fit. I think Arkansas and him would be a very good fit. But I think for him personally, what would be best for him, and I don't know if he wants to do this or not, would be to take the year off and go on TV. Because what happens when you're on TV, Corey? Same thing happened with Dan Mullen. You're on TV, your team's losing at halftime. James Franklin comes on at halftime. James Franklin, because they know so much more about college football than any of us. When you coach, an insane amount. He comes across really well. He'll break everything down. And then what do you start doing if you're just a fan of X team out there? You're like, Franklin really knows what he's talking about. Then you pull out your phone, you start Googling him, and you're like, he was better at Penn State than I thought. He did win the Big Ten that one year, and Yeah, it didn't end well, but he won a lot of games there. Maybe we could hire him. And I think that's what happens, and that's why I think it would be best for him to wait a year. He's going to be a hot name next year, whether people could believe that or not, but he's going to be, especially if he's on television. And he'd probably get a better job next year than just running into something now. But that's kind of what I think he should do. But I don't know if he wants to do that necessarily.
Yeah, I agree with you exactly. He probably should do that. I don't know if he will do that. But also, it sounds like he wants, and his age, he's always been good with the getting more money in contracts and working the coaching carousel well. So I feel like he's going to do what's best to make the most amount of money and put himself in a good position. But I don't think it's going to include waiting a year. Don on YouTube, but by the way, before I get to that, Lambda had a funny comment here. He said, "I go private equity route to pay off the buyout." And he goes, "Penn State football brought to you by the Saudi royal family." That makes me laugh.
It may come.
By the way, just a shout out to Rhett Koblitz. He does our graphics and work for us. You can find his website in the YouTube description below. If you need a graphic, you need anything like that done, whether it's for, your small business, whatever it may be, he'll help you out. He'll give you a little Hardcore Penn State Family Friends discount. I've known him since 2020. So I've worked with him on various things for about 5 years. He's a great dude to work with. And he does sports related things. He works and has worked with professional teams in the past. So make sure to check out redgoblitz.com, I think is what it is, but it's in the description below. For anything you need when it comes to those sort of things. Donnie asks in the chat, assuming Franklin is gone at some point, which assistant coaches are most likely to be retained by the next coach? He thinks Terry Smith, Knowles, and Trotwine. Terribly hard question to answer because we don't know who it's going to be. I would say that Knowles would be kept as of right now. I just think that I know people are pissed off at everybody right now, and I get that, but he was considered the number one defensive coordinator across across college football. That is going to take more than 6 games with a beat up defense to change that perception completely. Now, if it's a defensive minded coach like Manny Diaz, that's a different conversation, obviously. And I think that's where it's like, you got to wait and see. But if they bring in like an offensive-minded quarterback guru, then I think that becomes tangibly possible. I think Trotwine's a very interesting, we need to do research on Phil Trotwine and before and after Frank Leonard, because I don't know anymore, Shawn. Is Phil Trotwine good? Or is it all Frank Leonard? I don't know. And if Frank Leonard made that much sense, did he retire officially? Is that what he ended up doing? Did he retire?
Yeah, he retired. Yeah.
Get him out of retirement. Do whatever it takes.
I'd be fine with rehiring him. Yeah, just let him run the offensive line.
I will start a GoFundMe right now if we can get Frank Leonard back from retirement. I don't care. I'll rub that man's feet if we have to. Figure out how to get Frank Leonard back on the staff.
I would probably add Ty Howell to that list too. I think there's a good chance Ty Howell gets retained. And as long as Terry Smith doesn't retire, I think he comes back too. I know it's a little awkward going from interim coach to being back to being cornerback coach if he is the interim, which I anticipate he will be. But I think he gets interviewed for the job out of kind of a courtesy, especially if he does a good job as the interim. But I don't think he'll get the full-time gig. But I do think he could come back as the assistant head coach and cornerback coach, because he's Mr. Penn State. I mean, nobody's more Penn State than Terry Smith.
And he recruits the area so well.
Yeah, nobody knows Pittsburgh better than him either. So,
although I wish he would have got that cornerback that had a pick 6 for Oregon last night. That would have been nice.
Money.
One thing we didn't mention, besides the muff punt, which I give Devontae Ross a pass because he's literally was just trying to make a play because nobody else was. The special teams has been very good. If Justin Lustig, I think, has done a very good job that no one cares about special teams until something bad happens. But I don't know if we've ever had a blocked punt in back-to-back games. And the punting has been good by Nwosu. The kickoffs have been good by Nwosu. Besides Tyler Holsworth trying to just become KJ Hamler, like the kick return unit has been good. Corey Smith had a good return. Like they're doing really good things that doesn't matter right now. But I did want to give him a little bit of a shout out as well, because I do think the special teams units have been very good, besides maybe like the one onside kick. Like there have been blemishes, but as far as consistency compared to the offense and defense, they've been light years ahead.
That's a good point. Yes, Lustig should be retained. I don't even think he could ask I think if he even asks as angry as the fans are right now, they probably agree. Yeah, Lustig could stay because they have done their job this year.
All right. What I think we wrapped up all of the fan questions. Shawn, we're not sure if we're going to be able to do an Iowa preview. I know we're about at an hour, 30 minutes on this episode. I did want to just talk a little bit about Iowa as well. Their quarterback, Mark Gronowski, first quarterback to run for a touchdown in 6 straight games. So he's got a little wiggle to him, which terrifies me already from a Penn State linebacking perspective. Where are you at right now, Shawn? Like, let's just assume what we know right now. Assuming Franklin is the head coach going into Saturday, where are you at going into Kinnick Stadium at night?
Franklin's the head coach. We're going to get beat, and could get beat pretty bad. If he's not, we got a chance. Because I think they're going to, my mother always says, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And if something changes, and one of the biggest things that could change is your head coach getting, fired mid-season, then yeah, I think they have a chance now. Again, the drawback of firing Franklin is anybody could jump in the portal at any point, which I would assume means guys could just be like, I'm good for the rest of the year. I'm gonna rest up for the draft. So it's hard to predict exactly, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. So drawbacks of firing him, but I think the pros may outweigh the cons a little bit because they may stick around for Terry Smith, at least to finish the year out.
This Iowa team only lost to Indiana by 5. That just went on the road and beat
they're pretty
Oregon.
good.
Which, by the way, made me look like a genius last week on my picks for once in my life. Shawn, I wanted to throw another stat that I forgot to mention out there. Penn State in 2025 is averaging against power forward opponents is averaging 4 TFLs a game. And I want to just mention that they haven't played great competition yet in the power 4, power 5 area. Like Oregon, yeah, pretty good, not amazing now that we know. And then UCLA, Northwestern. So like not a ton, and they're averaging 4 TFLs a game. Last year, for the entire season against Power 4 teams, they averaged 7.75 tackles for loss a game. They led the country with 93 TFLs against Power 5, Power 4 opponents. So, and I know they had a lot, but still 7.75 per game. That doesn't matter about the amount of games. They're basically averaging 4 less TFLs a game than last year against decent teams. You and I are on very much the same page here when it comes to who could be the next head coach. I think we like an offensive guru kind of guy. But when I think TFLs, I think Manny Diaz. And you and I both like havoc. We like disruption. We like attack. You know what? For the first time in my life, when Jim Knowles was hired, and I think Jim Knowles, is a fine defensive coordinator. And I think, shout out to the Ohio State fans, they were mostly right. Like, this has not transitioned well. They're giving up way too many sustained drives for my liking, and I don't think he can do a whole bunch about it. But if Manny Diaz was the defensive coordinator, they would have just said, you know what? If you're going to score, you're going to score in 3 plays. You're not going to score in 15 plays. I can promise you that right now. Like, we are going to do something to either get the ball, take you completely off schedule where you're going to have to punt, or you're going to score. But I'm not playing around where you're going to go drive for 8 minutes every single time and only give my offense 4 possessions. I don't know how they get back to some of that, but I think they have to find a way to cause more havoc, cause more disruption, And one of the few reasons, or he's really the only reason I would consider not going with an offensive guru / quarterback, groomer, would be if Manny Diaz was somebody that they wanted to go after, just because I think he does fit the tenacity at which he fits the mold of a Penn State fan as far as attacking and whatnot. And when they hired defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, he might have been the only defensive coordinator ever that didn't mention having an attacking defense and aggressive defense. Like, that gets thrown around way too much. But maybe not every defense is attacking and super aggressive, and maybe they need to get back to that, because this defense seems to be a dog with a lot of bark and not a lot of bite.
Yeah, I would say that as well. And I think I actually tweeted during the game yesterday, maybe I don't love this scheme. Maybe I'll get used to it eventually, but I just don't. Whereas Manny's, yeah, I loved it. As far as next head coach for me, like, I think if we were going defense, yeah, Manny I would take him back. I'm going to be watching the Georgia Tech Duke game with great interest, because Brent Key is also probably on my list of potential replacements. But the one that makes a lot of sense, and I do have concerns because he's never been a head coach before, is Brian Hartline. Now I know you'll say, "Oh, Ohio State. Is Ryan Day really going to be leaving soon?" I don't really think so. Maybe fans will get so tired of losing to Michigan they'll just fire him just because of that. Maybe. But I don't really think I think a national championship, even at Ohio State, buys you a lot of cachet and buys you a lot of time. And I don't think he's in a hurry to get to the NFL necessarily. And really, Corey, if they do fire him, I don't think it's guaranteed Brian Hartline's going to get that job. I think they're going to go get Marcus Freeman. And they will be able to outbid Notre Dame to get him. So I think if Hartline just waits around for Ohio State to open up, that could be a long wait. And I think I think Penn State would be a good gig for him. He knows the recruiting area. He's been with Ohio State a long time. He's a very successful coach. He could develop talent. Knows a lot of coaches through that Ohio State tree. So I think he could build a good staff. I don't know what his relationship is like with Jim Knowles, because that relationship seems to be hot and cold depending on the staff member. But yeah, I think Brian Hartline makes a lot of sense, and I think you're going to hear his name more. I'd be surprised if he didn't interview for the job.
John, that's to me like why I said all that, right? Like, if you go defense, Manny Diaz, okay, sure. And like, yeah, Nick Saban, defensive minded. Dan Lanning, defensive minded. Kirby Smart, defensive minded. A lot of the better, consistent head coaches have been defensive minded. Obviously, Ryan Day being the exception, at Lincoln Riley, I guess, sort of being the exception to that. But to me, yes, you got to go. I cannot watch another pathetic offensive performance in a big game. I just can't do it, John. I don't care if we lose 45-48, but can we please not look like, I want to say a lot of different things, but can we just not look pathetic anymore? Like, I'm so tired of sitting in front of the TV or sitting in the stands and hoping and praying that we can find a way to move the football. Every single time we drop back the pass or every time we run the football, I feel like I'm begging way too much for us to move the ball. I just feel like we're trying so hard, and it shouldn't be that hard. It really should. It's like trying to eat, soup with a fork right now. It's just find a different utensil, for the love of God, and figure this out. And so that's where I don't know who I want, but I think that's why I'm like, just give me a good offense. And then I assume the identity of the defense, like, we're never going to lose that identity, even though linebacker you right now is more like linebacker poo. We've got to figure this out. I will agree with Mudbug. He just said on YouTube, and I think this is how I feel. He says, quote, "Maybe I'm just sad right now, but I'm just not excited about really anyone as a possibility," end quote. And honestly, maybe that's how I am too. Maybe I'm still apathetic, to use your word, and I'm just, you know, if you break up with a girlfriend and then you're just like, I don't want to date anybody for a while. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna take some time off from dating. I want to be single for a while. Can we just not have a head coach for a season?
I think you'll feel better when we hire a coach and they have that opening press conference. I think we'll all feel better. Depending on who it is too. Like if we hire John Gruden, I know there's a segment of the fan base that just gets like
why do they love him? Is it like a
I don't know.
Gruden
I
cult?
can't figure it out what the obsession is with this guy. The guy hasn't done anything in 22 years. He got fired over an email scandal for saying some pretty awful things. I know he kind of got screwed over on that, but he still said all that stuff. So that tells me he's an idiot for putting it in an email, for saying it to begin with, but then putting it in an email. And he's never coached in college football before. And that guy's going to solve all our problems? The old man Urban Meyer from the crypt is going to come solve all our problems? I don't know, guys. Like, I don't want to hear about Urban. I really don't. And I think Urban's a great coach and everything, was a great coach, but he hasn't coached since 2018 in college football. So I don't know. There are coaches out there. Those are two guys I really have no interest in. I actually have to go, Corey.
No,
so if you want to
I think we're pretty much wrapped up. Pete Nakos just tweeted that, quote, legitimate conversations are being held about James Franklin's future at Penn State. I would say that's like obviously like no shit, Pete, but thank you for that. We'll wrap up by saying this, and we went long today. We appreciate you guys being here. We expect changes to be made this week, and we'll figure out how we will go about conveying that to you. Please make sure you're following us at Hardcore PSUFB for the latest. The pick'em will be released probably a little bit later today, if not tomorrow. Make sure, if you're watching live on YouTube, you have liked this video and you have subscribed to the channel. We appreciate you guys all being here. James Franklin might be going somewhere, but we will not be. And then if you're listening on podcasts, just make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. We appreciate that very much.
Even if John Gruden's coach, we're not going anywhere.
No, but it would make things a little bit more difficult. It would make things a little bit more difficult. Thank you guys so much for being here. We will be back potentially a little bit later this week with potentially a lot of more breaking news. That's Shawn Kane. I'm Cory Lestochi. You have been watching and listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Till next time, see you guys. Good night.